Yeah. So one of the things here, I mean, if you move down, Jameson, this is on page 209, as Frederick Jameson explains, the concern for ontology has little to do with whether one believes in ghosts or the more banal assertion that the past is still alive in the present. All it says, if it can be thought to speak, is that the living present is scarcely as self-sufficient as it claims to be, that we would do well not to count on its density and solidity, which might, under exceptional circumstances, betray us. Ontology offers us a far more generous way of understanding visitors' expressions of fondness for and interest in history and heritage than dismissing their remarks as mere nostalgia. While they may leave the house without the sort of knowledge and understanding that might satisfy an historian, their performances of remembrance enact an affective and ethical relation to history, or something about which we would be considered, which we should be considered, or history as something about which we should be considered, precisely because it invites us to question the density and solidity as well as the inevitability of the present. I know that makes no sense. It makes a little bit of sense. But basically, it's messy. Let me continue. That this idea that the spaces of tourism do not comprise some sort of Euclidean grid around which self presents actors move, but rather a crumpled space where people and places are in process. So it's just it's messy. It's not just past is alive and present. But everything is an amalgamation of everything else. And the idea here, I know this is getting too complicated. But one of the things that I'm thinking about, it reminds me, going back to the State House paper that I wrote and submitted, is you can go back and look at the reading if you so desire. I put it on Tumblr. But this idea that they talk about in the book a lot about place. It's contained. But I'm arguing, and I think this is what ontology asks us to do, to broaden it up closer to space. That going on a tour at Fort Sumter is going to be, there's past, present, and future. It's also going to be linked to my own imagination of what it was like to be there, my own reading that I have done, the movies that I watch, and all that type of stuff. It's just, it's not so easy as to say, here it is. This is the history. This is what happened. It's much more complicated than that, and that's really what the idea of ontology, I think, is. That the whole idea of memory is never set. It's constant motion and process. And then it talks about the fantastic realism and doubt. And again, this whole section is really, really interesting. And basically, the idea here was that the tour itself creates doubt. And so what he's interested in is this idea of what Holdrych calls fantastic realism. A haunting where objects and spaces and images and stories and heritage sites lose their aura and become traces in Benjamin's sense, allowing visitors to be at once possessed by the site and to take possession of it as well. So it's almost as if it's not history, it's not authentic, nor is it inauthentic. It is a fantastic realism that we are captured or haunted by this place, but we also take possession of it as we interpret it, given our own baggage. The middle paragraph of 211 is very, very important as well, and again, the last paragraph, basically just read the whole damn thing. But basically, this is what he says. As visitors tour, and I think we can broaden this up to lots of different things, not just this particular house. All this stuff is general stuff. As the visitors tour the building, they tack back and forth between a state of flow and flexivity, the double consciousness inherent to the performance. where one part of them is walking in Mary's footsteps, following her trail, while another is wholly aware that Mary may never have walked here at all. This is a far more complex kind of engagement with the past and a more complex set of pleasures than the cartoonish image of cultural dopes consuming history-light packages on the fly that the heritage baiters have propagated. And while many historians still have reservations about how memory or collective memory or popular memory may relate to our best informed historical study, the example of Mary and her house suggests that part of the answer lies not simply in separating the historical truth from the distortions of memory or popular culture, but in discovering truths contained in our affective, emotional relations to the past, the ways in which our performances of remembrance make the past present, albeit the kind of presence governed by the differential logic of the trace, the haunting. Such performance of remembrance displace ontological questions of authenticity and epistemological questions of information and knowledge with a hauntological concern for ethics and justice. And I will let you read that last paragraph. No, I'll read it for you just because it's so damn good. But whereas Wormald sees this as a barrier, that is, the history versus this stuff, as a barrier to a more authentic engagement with Scottish and British history, the MQSH enables, by virtue of its space and rhetoric, an experience that allows people to perform in such a way as to lose their heads, albeit in figurative and reflexive way, by imagining themselves as in some sense co-present with Mary, by telling a story that puts the historical truth about Mary in play, that puts its own authenticity in doubt. The house enables a performance that achieves an authenticity of effect that, in Derrida's words, grants her the right to a hospitable memory out of a concern for justice. The ambivalent desire to have Mary Queen of Scots in the room with us is a testament not only to the compelling nature, of her tragic story or her particular gifts and talents, but to our need to visit and revisit her as we continue to work through the real and vexing historical problems, as well as our fantasies, fears, and desires concerning women, sex, power, religion, and history itself. Mind blown. Okay. Oops. I needed to take out some of these. There's still stuff left over from the other Alcatraz stuff, so disregard those. I need to delete slide 11 and delete slide another 11 about the cell house stuff from last time, and I'll put a new thing up. But hopefully that will help you with your reading. If this is now I'm at almost 50 minutes. Holy monkey! But I'll send you some various probes that we can call from this chapter for our tour of the Magnolia Plantation tomorrow. And maybe when I have those probing questions for you, some of this stuff that's a little bit hard to understand will be a little bit easier to understand. Thank you very much. Sorry this was so long. I was sort of getting into it. And it's also sort of confusing, and I'm sort of trying to sort out what I think about it as well and try to understand a little bit better as I'm sort of going through. And these are not scripted, as you can tell. Take care and work hard. Bye-bye.